Hi, I'm Tuomas Kuusniemi, and this is my research log pertaining to my master's thesis on the negotiation of rules and setting in and during a role-playing game session. I attended an intensive course, Nexus Analysis, Multimodality and Materiality in Action, last week. It was held by Pirkko Raudaskoski, who's well established in the field, and it was interesting. It was really interesting. I had insights. I'm not sure if they're applicable entirely to my topic, but they are applicable to role-playing games in general. I was really tired during that time. I hadn't slept the night before on the first day, and thank you, Lena, for the tea for the coffee, because that was necessary. That was really necessary. But even if I hadn't had coffee, I would have stayed reasonably alert, because, well, nexus analysis is a very broad applicability, and all the attendees were very representative of that. There were people from education, from technology, from the humanities, with media studies, literature stuff. And this sort of cross-discipline pollination is really valuable, because we are all people from very different sorts of backgrounds. We think differently, but in Nexus Analysis we use pretty much the same tools or the same approach, or similar approaches, because it's not really that set in stone at the moment, or yet. It will be eventually, and I'm glad to be part of the process. But yeah, it's very interesting to meet other people who think differently, but use the same tools, the same stuff as I do, because that exposes you to all sorts of different ideas. Now, I'm not sure how useful, specifically useful, it will be to my thesis. Some of it will be definitely. Pirkko introduced motive analysis, Berg's motive analysis, and I think that might be something that I will end up using, definitely. My great frustration at the moment is that I came up with a theory of role-playing games, or of role-playing rather, of the way role-playing games work. The idea came to me when we discussed layering. Layering is basically these different layers of communication that connect at certain points. And in role-playing games, these are explicit, which is unusual. That we have the sort of game world event stuff. We have social action in the game world level. We have social action at the strictly off-game level. Interaction that has nothing really to do with the game world or events in the game. They're just stuff you talk about with your friends. And then in between we have the sort of metagaming level that works as the conduit between these two layers. And the metagaming communication tends, its focus shifts during a gaming session. It goes from off-game to in-game talk. And whereas these off-game and in-game, or like game world stuff, works more as a motive. They're not quite as much tools, or they're not the means, they're the end. That it's the metagaming level where you discuss what's going on in the game that really directs where the focus is at the moment. And it's that metagaming thing that you manipulate during a role-playing game session. That when you get your turn, what you're doing is shifting people's attention inside the game world by using the metagaming sort of narrative layer, communicative layer. And then by doing so, you shift the world, the setting, the game world itself, in a certain direction. Whereas, of course, you can also use the meta narrative, the metagaming, to shift the focus toward off-game stuff. For instance, if we think of immersion would, like speaking in character, for instance, that would bring the metagaming toward the game world, deeper into the game. Whereas if you simply narrate or describe what you're doing, or your character is doing, what's happening in the world, then the focus shifts a bit more toward the off-game stuff. I have this graph that I made. I'm not sure if it's really applicable. This is an idea that I'll have to sort of toy with for a while now. Sorry, this is really rambling, but I really have no recourse at the moment. This is the function of these videos, really, that I ramble at this camera. Someone may at some point watch it, but what I'm doing here is the really useful stuff. Actually, the really useful stuff happens when I'm editing this, because I have to review what are basically notes. Am I making sense? And then that will inform my my research. Sorry for putting you in this position. But then again, you click the link, you're watching the video, you can like close the tab or press stop anytime you like. I won't get offended. But I hope these will be useful to you as well. But yeah, the nexus analysis thing, I like intensive courses. They force you into that academic layer, sort of further deeper into the game, as it were. And it promotes immersion, and thereby concentration and engagement with the process. And it also, when all these other people are also in that same academic space, they, much like role-playing game characters, contribute to the game world, in this instance the academic discussion, and challenge your views and challenge your conception of what's going on, what nexus analysis is, or this bit of nexus analysis is, how to interpret this, how to view that, does this thing make sense or not? And it's sort of like a LARP in that sense. that it's 8 hours of hanging out with people who have similar interests but ultimately different goals, who can be antagonistic toward you, who are there to challenge you, and you are there to challenge them, and that you have this this dynamic relationship, the outcome of which you cannot really predict beforehand. That's the whole point. But yeah, I want more of these. It's really fun. Also, it's much simpler than costuming and getting props for a LARP. all you really need is are the stuff you need for a tabletop role-playing game session. Really, you need a pencil and paper, and you're all good to go. So it's a happy medium between these two, or maybe it's a fusion of the best bits. Okay, that's a whole nother theory I'm developing now, but it does illustrate the fact that role-playing games are a very, while they deal with the fantastic and while they're really rewarding and engaging and even escapist, it is a really mundane activity. It's not that special or different or alien from what we do everywhere else. So it's sort of strange that we are often in a position where we have to explain the hobby. Even though even the act of explaining the hobby is very similar to what you do in the hobby. Game mastering, for the most part, is explaining the world, explaining outcomes. I think it might just be a case of the word game throwing people off, because games are often viewed as competitive in some way, or that they have this very strong magic circle around them, that different rules apply, which I don't think is that true in role-playing games, especially in tabletop role-playing games, because when you push the metagaming toward the off-game space, then you're coming out of the magic circle. At least you're diluting it or making it vague, and then you again strengthen it when you go down toward the in-game space, the game world. Actually, one thing I've been looking at now, thanks to my advisors, Leena Kuura and Tiina Keisenen, for pointing this out, is project work and sort of project management of coming up with ideas and refining them in, for instance, in a professional setting, which is very, very similar to what goes on in a role-playing game session. That there's a certain structure there, that there might be someone who acts as a chair or a lead, who's a role that is very similar to being a game master or a facilitator in a role-playing game session. Well, thanks for watching if you made it this far, and thanks very much to everyone who was at the Nexus Analysis Intensive course. You all contributed a lot to my thinking and to my research, and I love you all. And I'll see you, hopefully, next time. Cheers, and game on.